So my wife is a full-blown atheist, and I'm agnostic. So I guess I'm the optimist in the family.
Says what he wants, but he's so contradicted. He's a man of conviction, but he's never been convicted.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for showing up. Today's guest is Joe Medeiros. He was the head writer on The Tonight Show for 22 years. He has some interesting stories how he was able to get that job and keep it for so many years. My friend Wardell called me today and he said, dude, I've been listening to your podcast and I think you need to talk more at the beginning. So Wardell, this is for you. I hope you listen to this. I'm also lucky enough to be producing a podcast for Ross Matthews, and we're trying to add video to the whole formula. And I was over there today trying to make that work. I also produce Ray Oldhofer's podcast called Do Tell Ray. Right now it's in the NFL form. He's talking with young Adam, the high school senior, who is a very knowledgeable young man regarding the NFL. And then Ray's also talking about bringing his home repair, home improvement podcast back. So you may hear that coming soon. So I've been super busy. So that's what's going on with me. Now let's get to my guest, Joe Medeiros. Well, I am here with Joe Medeiros, former head writer for The Tonight Show.
With Jay Leno.
With Jay Leno. That's right. We have to distinguish because it was Carson. That was the same name, same title.
Yeah, and it was, originally Steve Allen way back when. But yeah, Johnny Carson and then Jay and then now Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah. Yes. In 2004, I was fortunate enough to get a call from Walter Lewis to come and fill the needs of a third editor.
Oh, cool.
That's how I showed up there.
Well, it was a lot of fun working with you those years. You were there from 2004, so we worked together 6 years.
Yeah.
So I left in 2010.
It was a great place to work, I think. I had an amazing time there.
Yeah, I think everybody did.
Yeah.
It was hard work, but, not hard in the sense of digging ditches or pouring concrete, which I did, many years ago for my father. But, you're working in television every day, and it's, first of all, a blessing because nobody gets to work in television every day for all those years.
I know.
It's we were really spoiled.
For sure. The free lunches and the hiatus weeks all the time. It was unbelievable.
No, it was good. Good job.
You are a musician. You've always been a musician.
Yeah, I started playing music when I was 13, and the Beatles came out. And I saw, all these girls screaming and running after them. And I said, oh, I got to try this out. So, yeah, I started at 13, and I worked all through high school and all through college as a musician. I never had a real job until I graduated college and had to go and, work for a living.
I remember being very impressed. You broke out your guitar once, and I was like, whoa. I think I had a guitar in my edit bay, and you just picked it up, and I was like, wow, look at that. And, yeah.
Yeah, I should be a lot better than I am had I put in the kind of time I'm putting in now, when I was younger. But, you think you know everything when you're young. Now I realize how little I know about the instrument. And,
there's always something to learn.
Oh, absolutely. It never ends.
You play Django Reinhardt style, or that's one of your styles you play, right?
Well, that's the only style I play now. I mean, I grew up playing rock, and I was in cover bands all through high school and college. I met my wife when I was playing in a rock band at the New Jersey Shore. Uh-huh. And then, after I got married, I sort of, put the guitar under the bed and bring it out every now and then. And, my son became a drummer, so, we would play together. And I guess when I moved out here, I saw that there was a blues community, and I started going to open jams, playing blues in and around L.A. Mm-hmm. So I figured, blues basically 3 chords, not a lot for an old guy like me to remember, and I like to improvise. That's what I like a little bit more than playing, rock songs that have a, regular structured beginning, middle, and end. A blues, you do the head, then everybody solos, and then you end the song. And
Right.
that's kind of what I do with Django stuff, but that's more of it's acoustic, first of all, which is nice because my ears don't ring anymore when I play with a group of people. And there's no drummer, which is also for the reason that it's not very loud, and you can play it in your house, at any time of day or night.
You have a bass, though.
Yeah, it's an upright bass, which is cool.
Yeah. And I remember we were walking, I think maybe somewhere, and B.B. King was on the show, and someone was rolling back, and you said, "Happy birthday, B.B." to him, because I guess it was his birthday, and I remember this specifically because didn't know that, and I was bold enough, and I don't know, maybe it's long enough now that I won't get in trouble. I have a guitar up there, if you'll notice, that's signed by B.B. King, that I got signed that very day.
Oh, that's funny.
And only because his people stopped me or something to ask about where a CVS was or something, and
right.
And I was like, "Oh, here, let me get you to the right person," and I saw him sitting in there, and he smiled at me, and I was like, "Wait, my guitar's just right over here. Okay, how can I got to do this." So I went over and said, "Would you mind?" He goes, "No problem. I don't usually sign these type of guitars. Here's not a Gibson."
Right.
And then he signed it and said, "Good luck with that." And
that's cool.
That was very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a great player. One of my influences. I
bet.
just love the way he played his vibrato, and of course his singing.
Yeah, he will be sorely missed.
Yes.
You have your Django style band plays right near here, I think, and I'm going to come see you. It's really just less than 2 miles or something from here.
Yeah, I'm in a band called Swing Ambiance, and we play the first Wednesday of every month at Ireland's 32. It's an Irish bar. So what better place to see, Django Reinhardt French gypsy jazz than in an Irish bar in the Valley here in Los Angeles. Perfect. So we're there, actually, this will come out afterwards, but we're there tomorrow night. So.
Awesome. You mentioned to me when I asked you about how you got started in writing comedy, and can you tell that story?
Well, I'll try to give you the abridged version here, but I went to school at Temple University in Philadelphia, and I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be a screenwriter and director. And I was living back in Philadelphia, which is probably not the place to launch a show business career from, although, people have, but they've, had to come out here to L.A.
Sure.
Or New York. So I was in advertising as a writer, a copywriter, and one day, I was just browsing through a book that my wife had given me for Christmas. It was a book of Leonardo da Vinci, and I just saw in there a little sentence that just kind of floored me, because I've always, admired Da Vinci. I always watched things on PBS, whenever they had a show about him. And it said that the Mona Lisa was stolen once and was missing for 2.5 years, and was stolen by an Italian laborer, an Italian workman. Well, that just blew my mind. It's like, how, I consider myself a trivia buff. I'm pretty good at, Trivial Pursuit, and when people were playing that. I don't know if anybody still plays that.
Sure.
But my head is filled with a lot of nonsensical facts. And so I saw that, this painting had been stolen. I figured, man, that sounds like a great idea for a movie. So I went to the library in Philadelphia and did as much research as I could back then. And this, I'm talking in the 70s.
Right.
So, no cell phones, no Google, no computers. You go and look at the microfiche, a little crank thing.
Sure.
Run through that. So I found out, about the theft, and I tried to write a screenplay. I tried for years and years and years and years, and just for one reason or another, maybe because I really suck as a writer, a fiction writer, I couldn't do anything. So just for a change of pace, I took a comedy writing course. So I figure, 120-page script is pretty hard. A 2-line joke for me seemed a little easier, and it was. I was, had a good time writing taking the course, and in a short amount of time, I started selling my homework. And I did that for a number of years before Jay Leno came to town, and I got my material to him, and that sort of changed the course of my life, and the life of my wife Justine and my kids. We ended up moving out here. That's a weird way to get in show business, and I don't recommend it.
Yeah. And he just said, "Hey, you want to start writing jokes for me? Heck, let's do it.
Well, what happened was, I saw that he was, well, what happened, let me go back even more. I joined this little comedy group by a guy named Gene Perrott, who was Bob Hope's head writer. He had written a book about how to get into comedy writing. I like a sponge, I absorbed, everything I could read about how to write jokes and how to, get into show business. And it turned out that Gene was from Philadelphia. He had a job at General Electric, and he started writing jokes on the side, and he got his, material to Hollywood, and he ended up getting hired by people out here, and he moved out here and started with Laugh-In and Carol Burnett and Bob Hope, and he created a Mama's Family, I think with a few other people, and I figured, well, this is the guy that I want to, follow in his footsteps, because, hey, I'm from Philadelphia, I could write jokes, So through 6 degrees of separation, we had a link to Gene, and I was able to get his address here in Los Angeles, and I wrote him a letter. And I never heard from him. He never wrote back. But being in show business now, I understand that, you're just swamped, and you get these kind of letters from these people in the middle of nowhere, all the time, and it's tough to answer everything. But then I wrote back again, and I quoted a little paragraph in his book that said, if you want to get into the business, you need to network with people. You need to approach them. So I quoted that, and he wrote me back like immediately. And he said that one of the things that I could do to get into business was to join his little, well, it wasn't a little group, it was a pretty big group of wannabe comedy writers from all over the country. And they would come together once a year out in Los Angeles and, compete, write jokes, have a good time, meet each other, network, talk about, getting into the business. So while I was at one of these conventions, it was in '88, I found out that Jay Leno was looking for material. And that at the time he paid $50 a joke, which was, a lot better than the $2 a joke I was making selling it to publications that went to disc jockeys. So I wasn't that familiar with Jay, but I knew that he was guest hosting for Johnny Carson, so I watched him do the show one night, and I tape recorded his monologue, and I typed it out just so I got his rhythm. Then I found out he was coming to Philadelphia for a personal appearance. So I wrote a bunch of jokes and put it in an envelope, and my wife drove it out to the box office of the theater that he was performing in. I love it. And I figured, well, who knows, maybe I'll hear something. 12:30 at night, we're in bed, we're asleep, the phone rings, and you think, oh, God, who's dead by the side of the road? I'm going to have to go to the hospital. This is bad news. Pick up the phone, and, hey, Joe, this is Jay. I got your jokes. Well, we talked a little bit, and he invited me to send jokes to him.
That's great.
And he started buying jokes, and I did that for a couple of months. And, NBC was letting him, he was guest hosting for Johnny, so NBC was letting him put together a staff, and he ended up hiring me. He called me at work and said, I talked to NBC, you start tomorrow. And this was in December of '88.
Oh, man.
So for 4 years, I worked at home in Pennsylvania faxing jokes into Jay. And this is, again, the pre-technological era where, the fax machines were like $3,000, steam-driven things with giant turbines.
Right. With the rolls of paper, right?
Oh, yeah, the big rolls of paper. And, if you left them in the sun, they would just turn black. And it was just ridiculous. Man. But yeah, that's what I did, and I was able to quit my day job in advertising, and for 4 years I, faxed jokes for Jay, and when he took over the show in '92, we moved out here to Los Angeles. Again, another strange story.
And then you were there till 2010.
Yeah. Man. Yeah, 22 years. 22 years with a job in show business. I mean, that's like unheard of. Yeah.
Unheard of. Yeah. Even me, it was like almost 10 years as a freelance editor. It's like, what? You did, where? How long? Yeah.
No, we were really blessed. I mean, that's, a franchise. And we're lucky that there wasn't a great turnover, in staff.
It's true.
Most of the people that started with Jay ended with Jay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's loyal that way. Stay.
No, it was great.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have been different had we not eventually become number one.
Maybe.
I'm sure, heads would have rolled along the way, and rightfully so. I mean, you got to shake it up. And there were some times there where it was tough, especially battling Letterman when he first came, on at his 11:30 slot. But,
right.
Jay prevailed, and it was a good run.
Sure was. As the show was finishing up, you turned your focus back onto this Mona Lisa.
That's it. The long-winded way of, I wanted to write a script about this. It got me into joke writing. And then as technology changed, because I always liked making films. I went to school for filmmaking, but I'd never made films afterwards because, we shot on Super 8 in school, and, you can never sync the sound. You had to have a tape recorder and a projector, and you're ready, 1, 2, 3, you press both, and you hope things line up.
Totally, I did that
Yeah,
too.
Yep.
Yep.
And 16 millimeter was, cumbersome and expensive, but when digital came out and HD cameras, and I started editing, well, that's what I used to do, at the show, because we'd go out and shoot some tape. And I used to have to sit, they would give me a time-coded VHS, like when we'd go out and do jaywalking or something like that.
And you'd have hours and hours of stuff.
Hours and hours of stuff, and I have to write down, the in time code, the out time code, and then I'd have to give it to you or one of the other guys, and they'd have to look at it and then pull those numbers. And when I found out that Avid came out, and I was able to get it on my laptop, I said, well, give me the footage. I'll screen it. Rather than write down stuff, I'll just pull the selects and give it to you, and then, we're a step ahead.
Yep.
Because we were always pressed for time.
Yep.
When are we going to get this done? It's got to air tomorrow night. Holy smokes, we just shot it.
Yep.
So I started doing that. And then gradually, as I found out that, I come to you and it's like, geez, I can't get till tomorrow. So it's like, all right, well, let me take another pass at this. Maybe I'll refine it a little bit. Maybe I'll put it in a different order. So I started getting, more competent in editing.
Sure.
Not to the level that you were or the other editors, but, enough to make your job maybe hopefully a little easier.
Oh, yeah.
But then, once I got a camera, I started going out and making short films. And then that really helped me, learn to edit. And, after making about 4 or 5 short films, my wife and I were talking about, because she was very organized and she became like a producer for me. And she would book these outside projects that I would do, knowing that The Tonight Show was going to go, Jay was going to go off the air in 2009 for the first time, before he got the 10 o'clock show and before he went back at 11:30.
Right.
And I figured, well, let me look for what it is that I want to do. And geez, I'd like to maybe, make some films, get into that. And she suggested, well, why don't we make a documentary about the theft of the Mona Lisa? The painting was stolen by an Italian guy who kept it in his room in Paris for 2.5 years before he brought it to Italy. He basically got away with it. I mean, the police sort of knew who he was because he worked at the Louvre, and this was no grand, Tom Cruise-like, caper. He basically walked into the museum, took the world's most famous painting off the wall, took it out of its frame, wrapped his smock around it, and walked out of the museum and took it back to his apartment. And he had it for 2.5 years. I mean, the police kind of knew who he was because he had worked at the Louvre. They interviewed him. He was never suspected because, he was a laborer. He was a common guy. He was an immigrant.
Sure.
To use those sort of, overtones to, what's going on today.
Yeah.
It's like, well, the police said, well, an immigrant's not going to be able to pull this off. I mean, it must have been a master criminal.
Right.
Some brilliant...
highly educated
highly
man.
educated, sophisticated, not this guy who only went to 3rd grade or whatever. But it turns out he did it. And I always thought that this is a great story because I always like the little man screwing the,
Hell yeah.
the institution,
Yeah.
putting it to the man. I always kind of like that. And, when I found that his daughter was alive, I Googled his name and up popped his daughter. I figured, well, maybe this is a way to do a documentary. And we were able to get in touch with her, and that's kind of got the ball rolling. And as hard as it was to, try to write a script, that's how easy it was for me to do a documentary because all the doors were open and we were able to go and interview her, and we shot in the Louvre, and, we did a lot of remarkable things in the course of a couple of years producing this.
No, I saw it. It's very good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, it was, you discover, you fill in pieces of things you just had no idea about. And
it's basically a detective story, and we sort of, trace the route of how we discover. I mean, the thing is, Celestina, the thief's daughter, was 1.5 years old when her father died. And she tells this wonderful story of him coming home to see his wife. It was his birthday and it was her birthday. And they were going to celebrate together. And he came with flowers and some wine. And he ends up dropping dead of a heart attack right there in front of their house outside Paris. And she was 1.5 years old, but she'd never, I'm sure didn't remember that, but had been told the story.
wow.
And she always wanted to know the truth about her father. And that's really the gist of the film. We wanted to find out why he did it, how he got away with it, where he hid it, and was there any conspirators with him? And we found a lot of information that she didn't have, and we were able to present it to her. That's really the gist of the film.
People can see that on Amazon Prime.
I know that you can rent it. Well, they rent it on our site. It's called Mona Lisa is Missing. It was on Netflix for a year and a half, but that ran its course. It was on TV in Europe and in France and Germany and Italy. I was in Italy 3 years ago and I saw it on television, which was a riot because when they show it over there, I narrate the film because it's the story is part of my 30-year obsession with the theft and how we were able to solve the crime for the thief's daughter. So in Italy, they strip out my voice and they put in an Italian speaker. This masculine, macho-sounding, mi chiamo Giuseppe. Uh-huh. So he basically narrates the film, and I watched it on Italian television because I thought, hey, this guy's pretty good, much better than me. But yeah, it's on MonaLisaMissing.com. You can get it through our website on DVD if anybody still buys those, and streaming and downloading.
Excellent.
And also iTunes, I think, has it. Amazon Prime, I think you could search it. Yeah, I think it's there as well. You can buy the DVD. But if you go through our website, it's it's one step less.
Sure. And I think I saw something about a documentary on Doors of
Florence.
Of Florence.
Yeah,
right.
that's on my website, midairrose.com. Midair Rose, as in midair collision, and rose as in flower, one word. Yeah, that was just something I shot when I was in Florence one day. It's like, okay, I have a camera. Let me shoot something different. And I thought all the doors were interesting.
They are.
And I just put it to 1 minute. It's like 1 minute long. And, it's up on YouTube, I think.
I believe, I don't know if you remember this. You commissioned me
yes,
to write a song about T-shirts. There was also a Walrus song, but then there was a T-shirt song that I wrote for you too.
Oh,
do you remember the T-shirt song?
I remember I did a film about seals having sex.
Right.
And I put it to the Nutcracker Suite. It's called Sex on the Beach, and that's also on YouTube. I think it's got like 750,000 hits by now.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And then, yeah, you wrote... a lyric to your own song, like a blues kind of thing.
Right.
I have never gotten around to re-editing that. And the T-shirt thing, I never even pursued it. I got involved in the Mona Lisa film.
But you said you had you were fascinated in old T-shirts and how people.
Yeah.
You told me like the whole story of it, and I went and I wrote a sort of a. I swear I have it somewhere.
Well, you have to send it to me. I know I have the seal one, but I don't know that I have that one.
Yeah.
If you find it, send it to me. Maybe it'll,
I definitely have
get me to do the T-shirt one. Except I got to find somebody to pay for these films. I ain't fronting the money anymore for these things.
Tell me about it. Do you have any advice for any youngsters who are coming out of college and want to be in the comedy business or be in the entertainment business? What would you tell them? To be persistent? Would you tell them to go for it, never give up, or any other more specific advice, perhaps?
Yes and no. Well, the thing is, you got to. I guess the analogy that I use is kind of like a mountain climbing, analogy. I don't climb mountains. I don't know anybody who does, but I see it. They make movies about it, and it looks like a pretty challenging. Difficult thing to do, but the one thing I do know about mountain climbing is that you don't stand at the bottom and jump to the top. It's a laborious, step-by-step, very slow, arduous, kind of careful climb to the top. I think too many people expect too much. This business, and I was like that too in the beginning. I'm thinking, I wrote jokes and sent it to Saturday Night Live, and I never heard from them. I sent to comedians. I sent to Phyllis Diller. I sent to Joan Rivers and things like that. You get rejection letters, and I sent to Bob Hope at the time, and he rejected me. Although eventually I did write for him, and I wrote for him for 4 years. But you're not going to. You need to perfect your craft. So you need to put your butt in the chair every day. And that's kind of what I did. I worked in advertising every day. I had a house and a family. I mean, I couldn't quit my job and go off and, try to go to Hollywood. I mean, I had to work in advertising So I had to find time I wanted to write jokes. I took this correspondence course in joke writing, and I needed to do my assignments for that. So when was it that I was going to do that? When I got home from work, as a writer all day, I was usually too fried. Plus, I didn't want to deny time with my wife and kids. I mean, I couldn't. You have to. You've got kids.
Yes, I do.
You need to put in your time. So I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd go right to the typewriter at the time, and try to write jokes, write for an hour or two, whatever I had before I had to get dressed to go to work. And I tried to do that every day. And I'm not a terribly disciplined person, and I give up easily. I quit, a lot of times when things got tough, or at least I did. And what I did was I have a calendar, and I would put a gold star on the calendar for every morning that I got up, and I put my butt in the chair and worked. And even if I, put my butt in the chair and nothing occurred to me and I ended up falling asleep, I made the effort and I got up and I was there. So the assignment partially performed.
Sure.
So I would still put the star on the chair. And at the end of the month, you look back and it's like, well, 20 out of 30 days, I did it. Yeah. So you feel a little good about yourself. You feel that you're accomplishing things. So you get into that rhythm. And I did that for months. I did that for years. I have years worth of calendars where, the gold stars marked to little check marks. And eventually it becomes a habit.
It's great.
And you don't have to do it. I still get up early in the morning, but now, I play guitar. Even when I was doing the Tonight Show and working on my film, because there was an overlap there. I started the film in 2008 and I left the Tonight Show in 2010. So I would get up every morning and try to write the script for the documentary or edit, the stuff that I shot. But I get up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. So, I mean, that's a habit that has become ingrained. And, I was doing it 7 days a week, holidays, Christmas, vacation. So that's the one thing you need to do, as a writer. I'm speaking to writer now, or a musician, anybody. You need to find out when you have the time to do it. For me, it was early. For other people, maybe late. I mean, I'm not saying you have to do it at a specific time of day, but you do have to do it every day. And you have to do it every day until you get it to be a habit. Then maybe you could do it 6 days a week. Then maybe 5 days a week, but never less than that. I mean, you really need to put in the time to do it. And then you need to get your material out there. I was, writing all these jokes for this course, and I found some publications that went to disc jockeys, and I sent the jokes out, and I ended up selling them for like $2-3 a piece. And for me, there was no better reinforcement than getting money. I've always been kind of mercenary. I like to think that I'm funny for money. Mm-hmm. People go, "Oh, tell me a joke." It's like, no, I'm not a comedian. I'm not interested, as obviously witnessed by this podcast here. I'm just basically a windbag here. But I like to write and get paid, and
understandable. Sending
jokes out and getting checks back in the mail. That's the incentive then to get up the next morning at 5 o'clock and write more stuff. So get it out, even if you're getting it out for people that are going to perform it in showcases and things. And don't expect money right away, and don't do it only for money. I did a lot of stuff for free. People were roasting their friends, so you write some jokes for that, or you think of clever things to put in birthday cards, or you do little films. I still do films for people's birthdays and things like that, and my wife and my kids' birthdays. But yeah, get it out there, get it performed, and try to find other people to support your habit. I don't mean financially. I mean just sort of, join other groups. I was at this Gene Parrott roundtable for a while. And now that I'm playing music, I get together, and I'm in a band, but I get together with jam with other people once a week. And, you really need to get out there and put yourself on the line, because that's the way of learning as well. So the 3 things: put your butt in the chair and practice your craft. Get what it is that you're learning. Get it out there. Put yourself, in front of people, or in front of a situation where it may not be comfortable for you, and you're going to fail, and you're going to, feel like an idiot, and you're going to get flop sweat. And join other people who are in the same boat, and you talk about the same, difficulties and challenges and successes. I mean, those are the 3 things. And then the material meets the right opportunity. I mean, that's what happened to me. Jay Leno happened to be looking for writers, and I happened to have had 4 years under my belt writing jokes, and was, experienced enough, maybe practiced enough, that he would say, "All right, send me some jokes."
And you could deliver.
Yeah, well, yeah, and of course you get better. 4 years isn't really. You need, it's a 10,000 hour thing.
Sure.
You need to really probably put about 10 hours, 10 years in for you to be a master, or at least, a pretty good journeyman, at this craft. So there was enough that I could deliver to a deadline. And anybody that's in any business, no matter what it is, and manufacturing or any service business or slinging hamburgers, I mean, you know that you need to deliver
by a certain
certain day. And in advertising, I had those deadlines too. And comedy is no different. It's not the kind of thing where you can wait for inspiration. You have to make that inspiration.
Yeah. And
you have to produce the material.
You sit in the chair. You have 8 hours to come up with a couple pages of jokes, whether you're feeling funny or not. Go.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. And some days you'll be on, and other days you won't be on. But you need to submit something. And there were days when there was a lot of crap that I put in. But that's why when you work on a show, I mean, we had 20 writers. 10 of whom were working mostly on the monologue, and the rest of us were doing the comedy pieces, the edited pieces, the jaywalking, the field pieces. But it's like a baseball team. In baseball, you hit 300 and you're making tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And that's a failure rate of 2/3. So it's the same sort of thing in show business, that, there's a high failure rate, but it's, the good ones that stick in people's minds, that they talk about next morning at office, they get reproduced, they get retold, and that's the fun part of the business.
Absolutely. So, do you have any stories that that won't get you in any sort of trouble?
Well, just weird things. When I was living in Philadelphia and writing for the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, but living in my house in Glenside, Pennsylvania, in my old neighborhood, which was kind of like a weird thing. I mean, it's not that I went around and broadcasted it, but some of my neighbors doing things like that.
They're like, wait, you work for Jay Leno, but you're doing it in your house.
Yeah,
I don't understand, right?
Or at the same time, I was writing for Bob Hope, and the way that I got that was through Gene Parrott, who I became very friendly with. Gene was the one who told me to join his Comedy Roundtable. And I asked him, because one of the guys that I met at the Comedy Roundtable had written for Bob Hope. He was writing for Bob Hope, and he was in Kansas City. And I said, well, how are you writing for Bob Hope in Kansas City? He said, well, Hope travels around, and so I write local jokes for him. And so if he goes to Cincinnati, I write some local Cincinnati jokes, because his writers are doing other stuff. So I said, well, how did you get to Bob Hope? He said, well, Bob was coming to Kansas City, so I wrote up some jokes and dropped them in his hotel. Well, that's where I got the idea to drop the jokes for Jay.
Okay.
At the box office. So I said to Gene, is Bob Hope looking for anything? He said, well, he takes stringers on, he takes writers on. So I said, well, can I have his number? So he gave me Bob's number, and so I wrote some jokes and got him to Bob's office, and I actually called Bob Hope, and I got him on the phone. He said, well, I looked at your stuff. I think, they're not bad. And, I don't know that I really can use another writer. I said, well, I'll write anytime you go on the road. I'll write some, local jokes. I'll do anything. Mr. Hope, I said, I'm writing for Jay Leno at the time. So that was certainly a good calling card. He said, well, how much do you want for the jokes? So I'm thinking, oh God, Bob Hope, I could write for Bob Hope. It's like anything, Mr. Hope. I'm going, just please, take me on. I'll write for free. And then, well, I didn't say that, but I'm thinking that. But then all of a sudden, sense got a hold of me, and I said, well, Jay Leno pays me $50 a joke. And there was dead silence on the other end of the line. And he goes, well, I guess I can match that. So I started writing for Hope for $50 a joke. And I think, well, great. But then it's like, well, did I talk him up from like $25 a joke, or did I talk me down from $75 a joke? So I never really got a quote from him.
I wonder.
But it was great writing for him. I mean, I'd write him a bunch of jokes, and I never knew what he picked. And I get a nice sized check in the mail signed by him. So I would go to my local bank and, give the teller, here's a check from Bob Hope. And they'd look at it and they go, is this the Bob Hope? And I go, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then occasionally I'd hear him do one of his jokes on his TV special. And, when he was entertaining the troops, I remember he did one of my jokes. And that was a great thrill. So, it's stuff like that. Or the time when I was writing for Jay, and I would sit at my desk, everyone get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, write jokes. And usually at noon, I would take a little tape recorder and go walk around this local neighborhood park that we had. You had to be a member of, the community. You had to show your driver's license that you're from the area.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a guard there. So I'm walking, dictating jokes into my tape recorder. And all of a sudden, the guy pulls up in his little cart and he goes, "Your wife wants you to call her. Come back to the shack, the guard shack." So I got in his little cart and we go, it's like, oh God, what's happening? One of the kids sick, again, another tragedy. So I call up Justine and he goes, "Yeah, Jay called. Johnny Carson's sick. He has to be on tonight. He needs jokes." So I said, "Okay, I'll be right home." So I hung up and the guy goes, the guard goes, "Is everything okay?" And I go, "Yeah, Johnny Carson's sick." And he looks at me like I'm insane. So I told him the story, and then he looked at me like I was twice as insane. So, it's like weird sort of things like that happened over the years. And at the time, I was writing for Jay, for Bob Hope, and for Yakov Smirnov, the Russian comedian.
Sure.
So I was still in my job in advertising, and I'd go out to lunch or I'd be in a meeting, and all of a sudden I'd get a message, Bob Hope called, or Yakov Smirnov called. Those little pink sheets while you were out. And Bob Hope called while I was in a meeting with a client. The receptionist came in and goes, "Joe, Bob Hope's on the line." He had to talk to me, so it's like, oh, all right.
That's
sorry,
great.
client. But luckily, I got the job with Jay shortly after that, because I think I would have gotten fired for for moonlighting from my advertising job. The people there were very nice and very understanding, but still.
They were probably a little impressed at
A little
first.
impressed, but after a while, it's kind of like, all right, who's paying your paycheck here, you schmuck? You owe us first. Or the time, not to belabor this, but around Easter, we usually would take our kids. We lived in Philadelphia. We go down to Baltimore because they had a wonderful inner harbor there and great science museum, and we take the kids down there for Easter.
Crab cakes.
And the whole deal, the Easter brunch. So we went down there, checked into the hotel, and again, there was a message at the desk, call my father-in-law. And again, I called, and it was, Bob Hope called. So I called up, and he said, "I need some jokes. I'm taping tomorrow night my Easter special." It's like, okay, I'm in Baltimore. I don't have a computer with me. What am I going to do? They didn't make laptops back then. So I went to a Kinko's.
Uh-huh.
Well, the first thing I did was I got up the next morning and I started writing jokes at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's like, where in a hotel room am I going to write jokes? I went in the bathroom and just sat on the lid of the toilet, for 3 hours writing jokes. Then I found a Kinko's and there was an Apple computer, which I'd never used. I'm learning that and typing them out, and you send it to Bob Hope and you fax it to him. So things back then were a lot more difficult. Today, I could sit and write them on my phone and send them out. But that was the kind of thing where, to people that are trying to do this, if you get a chance to write for somebody,
work for it.
And, if it may be inconvenient, to do this, but if you really want to get into the business, you got to do that sort of thing until you get a track record, you get a salary, and you get a contract, and screw it, I'm not doing this.
Then you can get cocky.
Then you get cocky, and then you end up getting fired too. But it's always a fine line. I mean, people in show business, like I guess mostly everybody. My daughter's an agent, and my son is a producer in reality television, and they're constantly working 24/7, because of the kind of society that we live in. So, you young people out there, your workload, and it is 24/7. But to get in this business, you really need to be dedicated with that and deliver the material when they need it. And if they don't like it, that's the other thing too. If they don't like it, don't fight for it. There'll be other jokes, or maybe somebody else will buy the jokes. I would write jokes for Jay, and if he didn't like it, I'd send it to Bob Hope. And if he didn't like it, I'd send it to, somebody else. You just kind of work your way down the line. Everybody's sense of humor is different. Everybody's needs are different. So sometimes they'll like the joke, sometimes they won't. But don't try to convince them that maybe if you really, really believe in something, they could be wrong. But after a while, you're just going to antagonize them, and you're going to get the reputation as somebody difficult to work with. So just forget it and write another joke. I mean, jokes are easier to come by than jobs. You don't want to alienate the person that you're working for.
Defending that one joke you think is hilarious.
Defending that one joke, yeah.
Good advice.
Although consequently, there was a bit that we did for the Tonight Show that I had to fight for, and I had to convince Jay that it was good. It was this thing that we did. We took the show to Las Vegas, and the idea that I had was, for people that couldn't come down to the showroom, we would take Vegas to your room. So we would have, a comic, we'd have some showgirls, and then we would have Charo. Remember Charo?
Yeah.
A lot of high energy. She was, the singer, dancer.
Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Jay would be the MC, and he would bring these people in once at a time. The comic would tell a joke, the chorus lines would do a little dance, and Charo would do a song. And I did the bit. We went around to rooms in Las Vegas, knock on the door, and just do the show right then and there.
That's
and
awesome.
It turned out to be pretty good. It was a different kind of bit. It wasn't something that we did for a while, did before. It wasn't, it wasn't joke laden. It was kind of more of a performance experience kind of piece. And Jay wasn't sure, but he said, geez, I don't think this works. But I showed it to our producer and some of the staff. The regular people kind of got it. And, he ended up taking a chance with it, and we showed it. And luckily for me and for the other people that worked on the bit, it got huge laughs. And it ended up being in the show they submitted that won the Emmy for the Tonight Show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
As best, late night talk show. So, I mean, you never know. Sometimes you need to fight for stuff. Sometimes you'll be right. Sometimes you'll be wrong. Again, it's kind of a judgment call. I mean, don't be an idiot and fight for something that's bad. If you really believe in it, and then you find other people are kind of, this is good. Fight for it. But nothing succeeds like success, and nothing succeeds like hard work and perseverance.
Good advice, for sure.
All right. Well, good luck with your podcast. How many have you done so far?
Oh, I think I've recorded about 6 or so.
Well, so you've really run out of ideas for guests to have me on the show.
Oh, no, you were at the top of my list.
Yeah, you're digging the bottom, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel here.
No, good stories for sure.
Well,
I really appreciate you coming.
Well, thanks for having me, and you out there listening. I hope you didn't fall asleep in the car on the way to work listening to this thing.
Any chance you could maybe jangle off a little music for me at some point? I could put in as a bumper music.
We'll see
Okay.
down the line. But Mona Lisa's missing. It's monalisa.com. Go to the website and check it out, and send me an email there. Give me feedback, and certainly spread the word about Matthew's podcast, which I don't even know what it's called.
Man of Conviction.
Man of Conviction.
Because I'm a man of conviction, but I've never been convicted.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
But you hope to be convicted someday.
Someday I'd like to do some time, yes.
All right. There we go. All right. Well, I've done my time with you, so good night.
Thank you. That was Joe Medeiros, former head writer of The Tonight Show for 22 years, film director, and Django Reinhardt aficionado. Next week, I'm going to have on George Steeves. Not George Reeves and not Rick Steves, but George Steeves. A very interesting young man I met through this group of production people here. He was looking for a cameraman, and I could not help him out at the time. He has Asperger's and has not let that get in his way. He has a one-man show. He recently appeared on NCIS Los Angeles. He's a very interesting guy, and I'm glad he showed up here to talk to me. So tune in next week. Check it out. You can email me at manofconvictionpodcast@gmail.com. The website is manofconvictionpodcast.com, and Man of Conviction Pod is where you can find me on Instagram. If you feel like leaving me a nice review, perhaps a decent rating, that would be very, very nice of you. Thank you for hanging out, and ciao for now.